This morning our kitchen smelled of fresh coffee and toasted sourdough. By evening it reeked of cheap perfume, and the only thing being ground was my husband's car keys in our wedding gift blender. The smell of dark roast coffee and toasted sourdough used to be my favorite smell in the world. It was the scent of our mornings, the scent of Liam and me against the world, our little ritual. He'd grind the beans while I sliced the bread for the toaster. We'd sit at our small kitchen island, the one we'd painstakingly sanded and restained ourselves, and we'd talk. We'd talk about work, about the leaky faucet I needed to remind him to fix, about the kind of dog we'd get once we finally bought a house with a yard. For the last 6 months, we'd also been talking about baby names. Or rather, I'd talk, and he'd smile that slow, easy smile of his and say, "Whatever you want, love. You know I'll love whatever we make." This morning had started the same. The coffee was fragrant, the toast was perfectly golden. But there was a bitter undercurrent that had nothing to do with the beans. It was the familiar, gut-wrenching disappointment of another negative pregnancy test, its stark white window mocking me from the bathroom bin. I didn't tell him. I couldn't bear to see the flash of pity in his eyes before he masked it with his usual, "It's okay, babe, it'll happen when it's meant to." I just forced a smile, kissed his cheek as he grabbed his briefcase, and told him I loved him. "Love you more," he'd called back, the front door clicking shut behind him. The words, once a warm blanket, felt thin and threadbare today. I spent the day in a fog, going through the motions of my work-from-home job, the cursor blinking on a blank document for what felt like hours. I decided to be productive, to do something tangible to pull myself out of the funk. Laundry. It was mindless, a simple task with a satisfying result. I gathered the hamper from our bedroom, the familiar mix of my floral-scented clothes and his woodsy, clean scent. I separated the colors, my hands working on autopilot. I picked up the gray button-down he'd worn to a late meeting with a new client 2 nights ago. He'd come home after midnight smelling of whiskey and exhaustion and collapsed into bed, mumbling about how hard he was working for us, for our future. My fingers brushed against the collar, and I saw it. A single strand of hair. It was long, much longer than my shoulder-length brunette hair, and it was blonde. Not a natural, sun-kissed blonde. This was a bright, chemical, almost incandescent blonde, the kind that costs a fortune to maintain. It was stark against the charcoal gray of the fabric. My heart did a funny little stutter step in my chest. An innocent explanation, I told myself. He hugged a colleague. Someone stood too close to him on the train. My mind scrambled, building a flimsy fortress of denial. Then I brought the shirt closer, an unconscious animal instinct taking over, and I smelled it. Beneath the fading scent of his cologne and the stale smell of a smoky bar, there was another fragrance. It wasn't my perfume, the light, vanilla-based scent he always said he loved. This was floral but heavy and cloying, a cheap, aggressive kind of perfume that tries too hard, the kind of perfume a woman wears when she wants to be noticed, when she wants to leave a mark. The fortress of denial didn't just crumble, it was obliterated. I sank to the floor, the pile of laundry around me like the wreckage of a life I thought was mine. My breath came in ragged, shallow gasps. It felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. I dropped the shirt as if it had burned me. Every late night, every vaguely answered question, every time he'd angled his phone away from me, it all came rushing back, not as individual, explainable incidents, but as a sickening, cohesive pattern. The new client wasn't a project, it was a person. A person with long, bleached blonde hair and cheap perfume. I don't know how long I sat there on the laundry room floor, surrounded by the intimate debris of our shared life. Minutes? An hour? The sun shifted in the sky, a single beam of light cutting through the small window and illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Each one felt like a tiny, mocking star in the collapsed universe of my marriage. I thought about screaming, about throwing things, about calling my best friend and sobbing down the phone. But I did none of those things. A strange, terrifying calm washed over me. The grief was still there, a hot, heavy ball in my stomach, but something else was crystallizing on top of it, something cold and sharp and clear. That's when I heard it. The familiar crunch of tires on our gravel driveway, his car. He was home. He was going to walk through that door, smile his easy smile, and kiss me like nothing was wrong. He was going to ask me what was for dinner. He was going to lie, right to my face, with the scent of another woman still clinging to the shirt lying crumpled on the floor. I stood up on shaky legs, my eyes scanning the kitchen. They landed on the counter by the door, where he always tossed his keys. The sleek silver logo of his expensive car gleamed under the kitchen lights, a symbol of his freedom, his mobility, his ability to drive to her. My gaze drifted a few feet to the left to our high-powered, ridiculously expensive blender, the one we got as a wedding gift. My hand closed around the cold metal of his car keys. The tears stopped, and in their place, a cold, quiet hum started in the back of my mind, a sound a lot like a motor getting ready to start. The front door clicked open just as I slammed the lid on the blender. I didn't hesitate. I pressed the liquefy button, the highest setting. The initial silence was shattered by a monstrous, grinding roar. It wasn't the smooth whir of a fruit smoothie. It was a violent, metallic scream. The sound of hardened steel being tortured by a machine designed for ice and kale. Shards of black plastic and silver metal pinwheeled violently inside the thick glass pitcher. It was the ugliest, most beautiful sound I had ever heard. A primal scream I couldn't let out myself, outsourced to a kitchen appliance. Each shriek of metal on metal was a blow against the lie our life had become. "Honey, I'm home. What in God's name is that noise?" Liam's voice, usually a warm comfort, was a grating intrusion. He walked into the kitchen, loosening his tie, a weary but handsome picture of the devoted husband. His eyes followed the noise, first with confusion, then with dawning horror as he registered the mangled object being pulverized in the blender. Are those my keys?" His voice cracked on the last word, a mixture of disbelief and fury. I calmly switched the machine off. The sudden silence was heavier and more suffocating than the noise had been. The kitchen smelled of hot metal and ozone. I didn't look at him. I looked at the mangled heap of metal and plastic at the bottom of the pitcher. The shiny logo was gone, scraped into oblivion. Good. "My car keys," he whispered, his face pale. He took a step towards me. "Are you out of your mind? What the hell is wrong with you?" Slowly, I bent down and picked up the gray shirt from the floor, holding it out to him like an offering. "I was just doing some laundry," I said, my voice eerily steady. It didn't even sound like my own. It was a stranger's voice, hollowed out and emotionless. "You seem to have picked something up during your late meeting the other night." He stared at the shirt, then back at my face. The cogs were turning, his mind racing to formulate the right lie. I could almost see him shuffling through his deck of excuses. "A hair? You found a hair and you destroyed my car keys?" He tried to laugh, a short barking sound with no humor in it. "Babe, you're being paranoid. You know how stressful my job is. I'm around people all day. You can't seriously be—" It wasn't just the hair, Liam. I let the shirt fall to the floor between us. It was the perfume, so cheap, so desperate. It smells like her, doesn't it? The color drained completely from his face. He was caught, a cornered animal. And like any cornered animal, he lashed out. "This is insane. You've been on edge for months with the tests and the appointments. I know it's been hard on you. I know you're upset, but this is pathological. Destroying my property? Accusing me of this?" He gestured wildly between the shirt and the blender. He was trying to use my grief against me, twisting the knife of our shared sorrow to make me the crazy one, to make me the problem. It was a masterful, cruel performance. A few hours ago, it might have even worked, but I wasn't the same woman he'd left this morning. That woman was gone. In her place was someone who saw everything with a terrifying new clarity. I just watched him, silent, letting him talk, letting him dig his own grave. Seeing that his feigned concern wasn't working, he switched tactics to righteous indignation. You know what? Fine. You want to know where I was? I was working my ass off for US. His voice rose, vibrating with manufactured sincerity. Every single late night, every goddamn stressful meeting is so we can build our future, so we can afford the next round of treatments. I've been putting extra money aside from my bonuses, just like we planned, for the IVF fund. He delivered the lines with the flourish of a seasoned actor, his eyes pleading, trying to shame me back into my role as the loving, supportive wife. He thought he was playing his trump card, reminding me of our shared dream, the baby we were so desperate for. But he had no idea he had just handed me the gun and pointed it at his own head. The IVF fund, the one I managed, the one I checked just yesterday, my heart sinking when I saw how little progress we'd made. A cold black hole opened up in my stomach. The lies weren't just about fidelity, they ran deeper. They ran to the very core of the future he claimed to be building. My gaze drifted from his face, past the wrecked keys, to the tablet sitting on the kitchen island, open to our online banking page. He hadn't noticed it. He was too busy performing. I looked back at him, my expression unreadable. I let the silence stretch until it was taut and thin, until the sweat began to bead on his forehead. "What money, Liam?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, yet it cut through the room like a shard of glass. "Do you mean the $2,000 you spent at Tiffany's last Tuesday? Because the savings account we opened for our baby, it's empty." Liam's face went from indignant red to a blotchy, ashen white. He looked like he'd been slapped. His jaw worked silently for a few seconds, his carefully constructed performance collapsing into a pile of rubble around him. He glanced at the tablet on the island, his eyes widening as he saw the open banking app, the transaction history displayed in stark, damning black and white. The mask of the devoted, hard-working husband dissolved completely, revealing the panicked, deceitful stranger underneath. That's a mistake," he stammered, his voice losing its confident timbre. "The bank must have... It's a business expense. I used the wrong card. I can explain." "Explain it," I said, my voice still dangerously quiet. I crossed my arms over my chest, an immovable object. "Explain a $2,000 Tiffany's charge from the account we swore we wouldn't touch. Explain how you were working your ass off for us by buying jewelry for someone else, someone with long blonde hair." He started pacing, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up for the first time I'd seen all day. He looked trapped. "Look, okay, I messed up. I know I shouldn't have used that account. It was a stupid, impulsive thing. But it's not what you think. She's a client, a very important client. Her company is about to sign a huge contract, and a little corporate gifting is just part of the game." "A little corporate gifting?" I repeated the words, tasting their absurdity on my tongue. "What exactly did you buy your client at Tiffany's, Liam? A pen set? Some nice letterhead? Or was it maybe a little blue box with a silver necklace inside? Perhaps an infinity pendant to symbolize your endless business relationship?" His flinch was all the confirmation I needed. My stomach churned, but the cold resolve held firm. I was a surgeon now, cutting away the gangrenous parts of my life. The pain was immense, but the work was necessary. "I can't believe this," he finally exploded, falling back on anger as his last defense. "I make one mistake, one error in judgment, and suddenly I'm the villain. After everything I do for you, for us, I'm the one out there every day dealing with sharks, making the money that pays for this house, that pays for your doctors, and you're going to crucify me over one stupid gift to keep a client happy? Don't you dare," I hissed, taking a step forward. The ice in my veins cracked, and a flash of pure, hot rage broke through. "Don't you dare try to make this about me. This isn't about the money, Liam, not really. It's not even just about the cheating. It's about the lies. It's about you looking me in the eye day after day, holding my hand after another failed pregnancy test, talking about our future, while you were stealing from it. You weren't just stealing money. You were stealing my hope, our hope. You took the most sacred dream we had, and you used it to fund your sordid little affair. Tears were streaming down my face now, hot and angry. I wiped them away impatiently. They were a weakness I couldn't afford. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish, finally stripped of all his excuses. The truth was out, ugly and undeniable, standing between us in the wreckage of our kitchen. "So that's it then?" he said quietly, his shoulders slumping into feet. "You destroy my car and now you're going to destroy our marriage? Over this?" "You destroyed our marriage, Liam," I corrected him. "I'm just cleaning up the mess." I turned my back on him, walking over to the fridge and pulling out a bottle of water. My hands were shaking, but my actions felt deliberate, purposeful. I needed to focus on the next step, not the next hour or the next day, but the very next step. He watched me, a new kind of fear creeping into his eyes. He was seeing me for the first time, not as his adoring, slightly naive wife, but as a stranger, someone he didn't know, someone whose next move was terrifyingly unpredictable. "What are you going to do?" he asked, his voice small. I took a long, slow sip of water, my eyes never leaving his. I placed the bottle down on the counter with a soft click. I walked past him, heading towards the hallway that led to our bedrooms and my small home office. "You spent our baby money on your mistress," I said, pausing at the doorway, my back still to him. "And you wrecked my life with your lies. It seems only fair that I return the favor." I walked into my office and shut the door behind me, the click of the latch sounding like a final, definitive gunshot. He didn't follow me. I could hear him still standing in the kitchen, probably staring at the blender, the shirt, the empty space where I had just been. I sat down at my desk, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I opened my laptop, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. It was one thing to destroy a set of car keys. That was petty. That was rage. What I was about to do was something else entirely. It was strategic. It was methodical. It was ruin. His entire career, the very foundation of his pride and his lies, was built on a series of carefully managed projects and client relationships, all stored neatly on a shared server. A server to which I, his ever-helpful wife who had set up his home office network, had full, unrestricted administrative access. A single bead of sweat trickled down my temple as my finger moved towards the delete key. I wasn't just cleaning up a mess, I was planning to burn the whole house down. My finger hovered over the delete key for a fraction of a second, a moment of profound, terrible power. I could obliterate years of his work with a single click. Every proposal, every client file, every financial projection, gone. It was a tempting, scorched earth fantasy. But as the adrenaline began to recede, the cold, sharp clarity returned. Deleting it was too simple, too clean. It would be a mystery, a data loss incident, something their IT department might even be able to recover. It wasn't personal enough. It wasn't poetic. Liam didn't deserve a quick, clean ending. He deserved to watch his world unravel, thread by thread, at the hands of the very people he was trying to impress. My fingers flew across the keyboard, my background in digital marketing and comms suddenly feeling like a superpower. I wasn't a hacker, but I was meticulous. I knew his passwords. He used the same one for everything, a combination of our anniversary and his childhood dog's name. The irony of which was now a physical pain in my chest. First, I accessed his corporate email. I didn't delete anything. Instead, I started composing. I opened a new draft addressed to the entire senior management team, including the notoriously stern CEO, Mr. Henderson. The subject line was simple: Project Phoenix Full Transparency Report. Project Phoenix was his baby, the huge contract with the client he'd bought the Tiffany's necklace for. It was the project that was supposed to get him his next big promotion. With a few clicks, I attached the bank statement from our IVF account, highlighting the Tiffany's charge. Then I attached a screenshot of a few select messages from his phone, which I'd backed up to our shared cloud account months ago, never imagining I'd use them like this. Messages not from his client, but from a woman named Chloe B., filled with saccharine emojis and plans for a weekend getaway that coincided with his last business trip. The final attachment was a short, anonymous note I drafted. Corporate gifting funds for Project Phoenix appear to be co-mingled with personal expenditures. Suggest a full audit of Mr. Miller's expense reports to ensure compliance with company policy. Discretion is advised. I saved the draft. I didn't send it. Not yet. This was the opening salvo, waiting in the chamber. Next, I logged into his LinkedIn profile. He was so proud of it, meticulously curating his image as a rising star in the corporate world. I didn't change his profile picture or post anything inflammatory. That was too obvious. I went to his skills section and endorsed him for creative accounting, for risk management, for brand devaluation. Subtle, confusing, the kind of thing that would make his colleagues and headhunters tilt their heads and wonder. The silence from the kitchen was unsettling. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the house settling. No pacing, no shouting. It was the calm before a storm, and I knew I didn't have much time. My grand finale required precision. Liam worked for a massive, publicly traded company. They had a quarterly earnings call scheduled for the next morning, a huge event for investors. Liam had been rehearsing his small section of the presentation for weeks, boasting about the projected success of Project Phoenix. I navigated to the shared server where the presentation slides were stored. I opened the PowerPoint file. It was a sea of corporate blue, filled with optimistic graphs and bullet points about synergy and growth. I scrolled to Liam's section. There, on a slide titled Projected Q4 Revenue Spike, was a beautiful upward trending chart. I stared at it for a moment, then I gently, almost surgically, altered the underlying data in the embedded spreadsheet. I didn't tank it. That would be too suspicious. I just adjusted a few key variables, inputting a decimal point in the wrong place here, a slightly less optimistic growth factor there. The beautiful upward curve flattened. It didn't nosedive, it just stagnated. It was a picture of profound corporate mediocrity, a projection so lackluster it would make investors deeply nervous. It was a lie, of course, but it was a believable one, hidden inside his own data. No one would ever suspect sabotage. They would just think Liam was incompetent, that his golden project was, in fact, a dud. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. My blood ran cold. I quickly saved the modified presentation, overwriting the original file, and closed the window, switching my screen back to a bland work document just as the office door handle began to turn. Liam stood in the doorway, his face a mess of exhaustion and defeat. He looked smaller, diminished. "Can we just talk?" he pleaded, his voice raspy. "Please, don't do anything crazy. We can fix this. I can fix this." I looked at him, a man I had loved with every fiber of my being just this morning, and felt nothing but a vast, empty canyon between us. "There's nothing to fix, Liam," I said, my voice as cold as steel. "You just don't know it yet." He shook his head, looking utterly lost. "What does that even mean?" My phone, sitting on the desk beside my laptop, buzzed. It was a calendar alert. I'd set it weeks ago, a little flutter of hope in my stomach at the time. 7 p.m., dinner with Sarah and Tom. Tell them the news? The news was supposed to be a positive pregnancy test. Now, it was just a bitter reminder of another stolen dream. Sarah was my best friend, and Tom, her husband, was Liam's boss. He was the one who would be leading the earnings call tomorrow morning. I picked up the phone, a slow, predatory smile spreading across my face. Liam watched me, his eyes wide with a new, dawning comprehension of the word crazy. I hit the call button, putting the phone on speaker. "Hey," Sarah's cheerful voice filled the small office. Are you guys on your way? We're just about to open the wine." "Hey, Sarah," I said, my voice sweet as honey, my eyes locked on my husband's terrified face. "We're going to be a little late. Something unexpected came up. But listen, I need a huge favor. Could you put Tom on the phone for a second? There's a crucial error in Liam's presentation for tomorrow's call that he needs to know about immediately." The silence on the other end of the line was a dead weight. I could almost hear Sarah processing my words, the strange formality, the chilling undertone. Liam stood frozen in the doorway, his face a kabuki mask of horror. He looked like a man watching his own ghost float out of his body. The blood had drained from his face, leaving his skin a pasty, translucent gray. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. It was perfect. He was a spectator at his own execution. Okay?" Sarah's voice returned, laced with confusion. "Hang on a sec. Tom, sweetie, can you come here? It's Chloe. She says there's a problem with Liam's presentation." I heard the muffled sound of the phone being passed, then Tom's deep, authoritative voice. "Chloe, what's going on? Is everything all right? Liam didn't mention any issues when he left the office." "Everything is perfectly fine, Tom," I said, my voice radiating a calm, professional confidence that I didn't feel but could expertly fake. My gaze didn't waver from Liam's. I wanted him to see this, to hear it all. But I was just helping Liam do a final run-through of his slides for tomorrow, and I noticed a significant data discrepancy in the Project Phoenix revenue projections. It seems a decimal was misplaced in one of the key growth formulas. It's a small error, but it dramatically flattens the Q4 forecast. I've already corrected it and saved the new version to the server, but I wanted to make sure you were aware before the call. Liam is just mortified he didn't catch it himself. I let the lie hang in the air, a beautiful, poisonous spiderweb. It was plausible, helpful even. The concerned wife, saving her husband from professional embarrassment. Liam's eyes, however, told the real story. He knew. He knew I had fabricated the error just to correct it. He knew I had just painted him as a careless, incompetent fool to his own boss, moments before the most important presentation of his career. It was a checkmate he never saw coming. "A decimal point?" Tom sighed heavily. I could picture him pinching the bridge of his nose. "Jesus, that could have been a disaster. Good catch, Chloe. Seriously, you're a lifesaver. Tell Liam not to beat himself up, it happens. Just have him triple-check the rest of the numbers before morning. And you two, get over here, you've earned a drink." "We'll be there soon," I chirped, and ended the call. I placed the phone back on the desk with a soft, final click. The silence that followed was absolute. Liam finally seemed to find his voice, a strangled whisper. "Why?" "Because you thought I was a fool," I said, standing up and walking towards him. I stopped a foot away, forcing him to look at me. "You thought you could lie to me, steal from me, build a whole other life behind my back, and that I would just... What? Weep into my pillow? You underestimated me, Liam. You underestimated my pain, and you gravely, gravely underestimated my intelligence." I brushed past him, leaving the office and walking into our bedroom. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel happy. I felt a hollow, aching emptiness, but it was a clean emptiness, like a house that had been gutted and sterilized after a long illness. I pulled my largest suitcase from the top of the closet. He followed me, watching as I began to pull clothes from drawers, my movements efficient and calm. "So that's it?" he asked, his voice cracking. "You're just... leaving?" "I'm not leaving, Liam," I said, pausing to fold a sweater with precise, neat corners. "I left hours ago, somewhere between finding a blonde hair on your shirt and the smell of cheap perfume. This is just... the logistics." "But what about us?" he pleaded, the desperation raw in his voice. "Everything we built? The house? Our plans?" I finally turned to look at him, my face devoid of all the love and affection he had taken for granted for so long. "You burned it all down for a Tiffany's necklace, Liam. I'm just leaving you with the ashes." I didn't pack everything, just enough for a while. As I zipped the suitcase, I walked back into my office. Liam trailed behind me like a lost child. I sat at my desk and clicked send on the drafted email to his senior management, the one with the bank statements and the incriminating texts. I didn't need it for leverage anymore. It was simply a matter of housekeeping, tying up loose ends. Then I opened a new browser tab and navigated to a real estate website, to the listing for a small 2-bedroom condo overlooking the lake that I had been saving for weeks, a secret little what if that had now become my reality. I had my own savings account, one he knew nothing about, an escape fund I'd started after his lies began to feel less like isolated incidents and more like a pattern. It turned out to be the best investment I ever made. I stood up, grabbed my purse and the handle of my suitcase. I walked to the front door, Liam a few steps behind me, silent. My hand was on the doorknob when he spoke one last time. "Chloe, I'm sorry." I paused, but I didn't turn around. "I know," I said. "You're sorry you got caught." I opened the door and walked out into the cool night air. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew what I was leaving behind. A man with a wrecked car, a looming career implosion, and a blender full of mangled keys, a monument to his own destruction. As I drove away, the house shrinking in my rearview mirror, I didn't cry. For the first time in months, I felt like I could finally breathe. The scent of dark roast coffee and toasted sourdough was gone, replaced by the clean, sharp smell of a new beginning, and it smelled like freedom.